Her story is titled, Am I the a-hole for refusing pay for college for a child I have no legal obligation to anymore? For the sake of length, I'll try to stick to the facts and keep it brief. I, 50 male, legally have 3 children with my ex, 51, Adam, 23 male, Chris, 21 male, and Sophie, 18 female. Biologically, the first 2 children are mine, and youngest is the result of my wife's infidelity. I discovered this the day when Sophie was 2-year-old, and we had to rush Sophie to the emergency room. I filed for divorce 2 months later. I got 50-50 custody of my own children, but since Sophie was legally mine, I had to pay child support for her and was very bitter and resentful about it. I tried to fight it at first, but in the end, decided to suck it up to save myself the stress. But I made it very clear to my ex that outside of child support, I would take no other responsibility for the girl and would shut down any attempts at being her father. But I would make the effort to still be polite to Sophie. After some time, I learned to trust again and remarried a wonderful woman who made it very clear that she and her daughter were a package deal. I accepted this and did everything I could to try and be there for my stepdaughter, Katie, 17 female. Aside from typical ups and downs, I would say I managed to make a great family life for myself. We'd have family nights. I attended most after-school events, took my family on fun vacations, and put my sons through school and paid for their apartments and cars. They were on their own for gas money. Chris is expected to graduate this coming summer, and I made a silly post on social media about how relieved I was going to be that I only had one more kid to put through school left. A couple of days later, I got a message from my ex asking me to pay for Sophie's college expenses on my own, since the pandemic has made money tight. I asked her what she meant, and she referred to my post, and I reminded her that my legal obligation to Sophie ended the day she turned 18, and that I was talking about Katie. My ex was furious, demanded to know why I was willing to pay for Katie and not Sophie, since neither of them are related to me. I countered by saying that I knew up front Katie wasn't my biological child, and agreed to care for her instead of being conned into doing it like I was for Sophie. After that, I got a call from Sophie, asking what she did to make me hate her so much and to leave her feeling so excluded. I told her softly that I don't hate her, and that nothing about this situation was her fault, but the simple truth is that it wasn't personal. I'm just not her father. Since then, my sons have told me that Sophie was becoming really depressed. My ex is blaming me, but I don't see what I have to do with it. Am I the a-hole? Edit, just to be clear because I keep seeing the same questions. 1. The kids know why I divorced their mother. 2. My ex claims that Sophie was the result of a one-night stand and doesn't know who her father is, which is one of the reasons why I was kept on the hook for child support. 3. After I learned the truth, I was very angry and didn't think I could handle raising a child that I was tricked into caring for, so I decided to keep my distance. 4. Just because Sophie wasn't mine and I treated as such doesn't mean that I was horrible to the girl. I also made sure that my children knew that what happened between their mother and me was not Sophie's fault and they should never be mean to her. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. That poor girl. You don't have any legal or moral obligation to her, but she's taking the brunt of the consequences for your failed relationship, and none of this is her fault. Opie's not the one who failed in that relationship. It was her parents that were the failures. Regardless of the who's in the wrong question here, the grim reality is that Opie should be prepared to lose his sons. Some things that shouldn't necessarily be sides issues are going to end up being that way anyways. Of course, it has always been incredibly upsetting and confusing to Sophie that her legal father is distant and stilted with her while having a relationship with her brothers. And of course, her brothers have grown up witnessing that grief and have complicated feelings about it themselves. To children, that would come across as arbitrary cruelty. As young adults, they may understand it intellectually, but that doesn't mean they feel it the way Opie does. Now it is coming to a head, with Sophie realizing her adult life is going to be dramatically harder than her brothers, again, through no fault of hers, and her brothers can appreciate that that is brutally unfair, and they're all at home together experiencing this collective trauma of quarantine. And Opie is in a different home, with a different family that he has chosen for himself. That by no means makes him an a-hole, but in his son's position, I couldn't imagine my heart not breaking for my sister and feeling with resentment for my father. It can be no a-holes here, but still be a no-win situation where Opie will have to make the choices he makes and have to live with the consequences. I guess technically not the a-hole, but it's hard to wrap my head around loving a child for 2 years, then stopping, since she wasn't biologically yours. Well, realizing that you were lied to and tricked into being someone's parent can play a huge role into it. Not the a-hole. Your ex knew that Sophie was not yours. You made it clear you were done supporting her once you were no longer legally responsible. There is one huge a-hole in this. That is your ex. 1. She cheated on you. Had you believing you were the child's father and had you stopped paying child support until Sophie was 18. 2. Your ex was too selfish to plan for Sophie's education. That is her fault, not yours. I just want to add that Katie has nothing to do with this. Whether you had a stepdaughter or not, you would not be paying for Sophie's education. So, your ex or anyone else should not be bringing up the fact you're willing to pay for Katie's education, but not Sophie's. The two things are mutually exclusive of each other. Just happen to be the same thing. I hope that last part made sense. Now for the second story. Am I the a-hole for telling my mom she didn't do crap in raising me? I, 25 female, have had a terrible relationship with my mother for most of my life. She has been pretty abusive emotionally throughout my life, doing things like taking away my bed so I had to sleep on the floor, locking away groceries so I had no food, giving away all my clothes to my younger sister, not letting me date or hang out with friends, etc. The rest of the family acknowledges she hasn't treated me well, but doesn't think she was abusive, and that I could have handled things better by compromising more. My dad separated from her when I was 6 and took my older sisters to live with his new wife. Mom got custody of me, but he has continued to pay for everything from my education. I got scholarships from high school to med school, and money for my share of the house utilities, etc. I even had to buy things like tampons out of an allowance he gave me, because she refused to, saying they were too expensive. Where I live, we have no concept of child protection, and parents are pretty much never ever considered to be wrong. Doing the bare minimum is seen as doing a favor to your child, so for almost 24 years, I've had to live with her abuse, and despite that, I've done pretty well in life. I graduated from med school recently and am moving soon to a different country for my new job. She started going on and on about how I should stay home to take care of her because she's invested her whole life in raising me. 24/7, she'll try to emotionally manipulate and guilt trip me into being her unpaid caretaker. I tried to ignore her at first, but she kept listing out things like, I paid for your food, I gave you so many privileges and spent so much on you, so I got mad and told her she didn't do crap for me. I told her I never asked to be born, and she's not special for doing the absolute minimum for a child she brought into this world on purpose. She started crying and called my dad and sisters up, saying I was ungrateful and deliberately emotionally torturing her when she was sick. They're all telling me I am the a-hole because she has raised me for 25 years of my life and done her best, and that I didn't need to engage with her and create unnecessary drama when I'm going to be leaving soon anyway, especially since she has a chronic illness. So, am I the a-hole for denying her contribution to my upbringing and upsetting her for no reason? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole at all. If you do the bare minimum for me, I'll do the same for you. She never even paid for most of your stuff. It was your dad. Correct me if I'm wrong. Using the family to get on her side makes her an even worse a-hole. I'm really glad you left that house. Sounds horrible. You're correct. My dad paid for mostly everything. She occasionally bought groceries, but that was it. Not the a-hole. You just have a higher consciousness of right/wrong, and she is trapped by cultural constraints you don't want to continue in your life. On the flip side, she is scared of empty nest changes. Chalk it up to a blow-up confrontation, forgive her, and pursue your life. Maybe if you make good enough money, you can help her out, but your obligation is limited. Not the a-hole. Mom should have treated you better if she was expecting filial care from you, but from what you described, it sounds like classic narcissism. Your dad and sisters would also do well to remember that there's a reason why your dad separated from your mother. Not the a-hole. The sooner you can get away from this toxic family, the better. I wish you all the best in your new job. If your dad and sisters are so sympathetic to her, they can move back in with her. It's especially hypocritical of your dad, who ditched you and your mom when you were only 6, to try and guilt trip you into serving her for life. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for not forgiving my parents? I, 34 female, grew up with one sibling, 36 female, and both parents. There were various kinds of abuse. My sister was also the golden child. I came out as gay when I was 16. They interrogated me until I admitted. They then taped a letter to my door indicating that I was going to hell. There were then various books in the house about how to cure homosexuality. I'm positive if my sister had been gay, they would have led pride parades. I left. I stayed with friends, partners, and well, anyone, until I could obtain some security a few years later. At first, I still went to family functions, but my parents wouldn't speak to me. My mother did not look at me. I did this for a few years until the anxiety was too much. Then, I only went to family events they weren't attending. They bought my sister a car, paid for her college, and all of her living expenses. I also attended college, had to go through a process so I wouldn't have to claim them on my FA/FSA. Therapist wrote a letter, and did graduate. But had given myself an ulcer due to the stress of being a full-time student with 2 jobs and a 16-hour unpaid internship. My parents only sent happy birthday texts. Then came my sister's wedding. She had 5 events I had to attend. I was a bridesmaid. During all of these events, they again didn't look at me. It was painful. About 2 years after this, they sent a text indicating that they wanted to give me money for the same amount they spent on my sister's wedding. I discussed with my therapist, and my therapist indicated my parents opted not to give me a lot of things I needed. But that doesn't mean I should feel shameful about taking what they are offering if there are no strings attached. So, I met with them for lunch with my then girlfriend. My dad did speak to me but spoke mostly about other trivial family matters, and my mother spoke only through my father. She would whisper something to my father, and he would then ask a question. They gave me a check for $10,000. My dad said something vaguely about being proud of everything I have overcome. I internally was very confused. Did they mean their own abuse? Their own homophobia? They never asked to see me again. I used the money as part of the down payment for my house. Married my wife a few years later. I did not tell them. I didn't hear from them for a few years, other than the birthday messages. But in 2017, we began fostering. We took placement of a very sweet 14-month-old boy we adopted when he was 2.5 years old. I should mention my sister is child-free by choice. Since the adoption, I did not tell them. Any number of relatives could. My parents suddenly are vaguely sorry and now sending me weekly text messages. When I eventually indicated I felt this was only because of my child, they reportedly stated they didn't even know I had a child. They, however, not asked my child's name, age, how he came into existence, etc. They are now passively inviting me to various Zoom family events and really trying to have conversations. Am I the a-hole for not forgiving them? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. You don't need them in your life. If you're comfortable with the low contact, just continue that, or go no contact if you want. Be sure to tell them why. Not the a-hole. In what world would you be the a-hole here? You've done fantastic for yourself in spite of them, not because of them. Go you. There is truly a lot I couldn't post because of the character limit. So my parents will text these apologies and truthfully, I won't respond. They then show these messages to family members who lack a lot of context. That is, I have not told them about the abuse and only vaguely spoken about their homophobia. And then they basically tell me I am a cold and unforgiving. If your parents are spreading lies, enlighten them on the truth. Don't let them paint you in a bad light just because you won't give them what they want, when they wouldn't even give you a scrap of love that you deserved and treated you like an outcast. I guess they aren't really lying. They're apologizing and I am not responding. They, of course, aren't going to divulge the abuse. When they are asked why we don't talk, they say something about me making poor life choices, which in my family means I'm using drugs. Hard drugs. I've had to explain I'm not. In fact, addicted to heroin more times than any adult ever should. I guess I struggle just putting it all out there, both because trauma/PTSD is real here, and because my goal isn't to vilify people. My parents somehow are functional outside of our household. I've not seen the same toxic behavior in their other relationship, and I'm not down to burn down the whole metaphorical house. Maybe I'm being naive here. Not the a-hole. They haven't asked for forgiveness. They may think slipping you $10,000 was enough, but it doesn't really make up for anything. Do you still have a relationship with your sister? Off and on. They sometimes use her as a way to force the relationship. That is, she cornered my wife, telling her she needed to convince me to forgive them, and they deserve to have a relationship with their grandchild. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.
If I refuse, brother-in-law requests that I temporarily move out of my home. My wife and I have been married for over 20 years, dating since we were 16. Before the age of 21, I was a degenerate. I cheated, got in trouble with the law, and I was abusive, never physical, but definitely verbal. I was horrible. This woman never left my side, not once. The day we found out she was pregnant, it was like a switch flipped in my head. My wife kept our baby against her family's wishes. They wanted nothing to do with me. I don't blame them. Her parents and siblings basically disowned her after that. I completely turned my life around, married her, went back to school, got a job, had another wonderful kid, got another degree, and started a business. I make sure she never needs to work a day in her life. My life now revolves around making hers easier. We just renewed our vows last year. Time passed, and my wife has made amends with her family. But to this day, they do not acknowledge me. Again, I don't blame them. My wife's family lost her childhood home when she was around 13, when her parents divorced. It had been in her family for generations. She always wanted to own it again. Over the last decade, I kept tabs on it. About 3 years ago, the house went up for sale, and we bought it. My wife and I have been living there since. The kids are in college now, so it's just the two of us, and life has been very peaceful. Last month, my father-in-law died. Now mother-in-law is alone and needs a new place to stay. One of my wife's sisters never left the house or got married, and currently lives with and takes care of mother-in-law full-time. None of my wife's siblings can afford to take them in. My wife and I had a great idea. Mother-in-law and the sister can move into our house. It was their home once, so it will be familiar. We have more than enough space and funds to support both of them very comfortably, and I thought it was a great opportunity for me to improve my relationship with them too. Recently, I got a call from my brother-in-law. He liked the idea and thinks it's the best case scenario for everyone, except he has one condition. All the siblings want me to move out. As long as their mother is in that house, they do not want to deal with my presence whenever they visit her. They also don't want to feel like they're under my roof. I was ready to say no until he said this, that he and his siblings had to spend years growing up, dealing with the fallout of their parents, losing their oldest daughter to me. The last thing I can give her, he said, is to let their mother have her kids around peacefully in the house. In their defense, my wife's parents did become crazy strict on the rest of the siblings after she left with me, but that was years ago. We're all in our 40s now. They don't care if my wife stays or moves with me, they just want me gone. The family plans to place mother-in-law in a nursing home when her health deteriorates, which we're guessing will be in a year or two. They're not trying to claim ownership of the house. I trust my wife and her family on that. They're just that appalled by my presence and want me to live somewhere else temporarily while they care for their mother in her final years. On one hand, I want to laugh at how ridiculous the request is. On the other, maybe I owe it to that family? Before I give my advice, what is your wife's opinion? This just happened and I don't think wife even knows about it. The impression I get is that wife told them our original plan, and they are still at we'll all think about it and discuss plans again phase. I know for a fact wife would be either A, completely shoot the plan down, or B, insists she comes with me. The reason I am getting advice before I even turn to her is I didn't know if I should just tell my wife, hey, this is what your brother said, and I'm totally willing to do it from the get-go, in order to make her feel better about it if in fact we did decide I will leave. This is the absolute worst thing you can do for your family. This is a bridge too far. They don't deserve anything. You all survived in spite of what they did and how they treated you. They don't get to still treat you like you're that degenerate kid and want something from you. F that noise. You offered something generous, and then they wanted to put caveats on it. You do not do that when someone is offering you a kindness. That they are doing that shows that they are crappy, messed up people that you don't want around you anyway. Dude, the only reason that your mother-in-law and sister-in-law even have the opportunity to live in that house is because you bought it. Your wife's sibs need to grow the heck up and realize that people can change over the course of 30 years. Their refusal to acknowledge the fact that you are a completely different person now than you were back then is totally insulting to you and your wife. They should be grateful that you made the opportunity available. Their proposal is utterly selfish and insulting, not the a-hole. Seriously, he was a degenerate from the age of 16 to 21 years old. At 21, it sounds like he grew up and put his life together. I am honestly shocked that 20+ years later, the family is still holding his behavior against him from when he was basically still a child. These people seriously need to grow up. OP, I get you feel bad for your past actions, but enough is enough. It sounds like you have more than made amends for your early behavior. At this point, the family's treatment of you now is disgusting. They have no right to ask you to leave your house. That is just ridiculous. Don't leave your house. Don't let anyone but your kids stay in your apartment. The in-laws sound like they would not pay any bills because you can afford it, and then claim squatters' rights when it was time to move. You have treated your wife and children well, but your in-laws don't see it and probably never will. Stop bending over backwards for them and tell your wife to stop too. Next story. Am I the a-hole for getting mad at my girlfriend for not telling her parents no? My girlfriend, 23, and I, 25, moved into a house I just bought, a brand new house. And within 2 months of living in it, she tells me that she told her parents they could live here practically rent-free until they get their own place. Mind you, they are not just changing houses, they are being evicted. This is their second eviction in the last 7 years, all due to their poor financial decisions. They are both avid gamblers and have made other poor life choices. They both have an income that amounts to well over what they need to live on, yet they have always asked for money and never seem to have any. I told her that the only way they are going to learn is if we tell them no, and she refuses to do that because they're her parents. I told her that she's enabling them to continue with their bad habits, and that I am willing to break up with her if she doesn't change her mindset on helping them this way. I understand that they are her parents, but I am not supporting them as if they are my children. Is this enough to leave someone over? We have been together for almost 3 years. The house is in my name, and I can afford everything solely by myself. I'll try to answer any questions that may arise if need be. If you let them move in, they will never leave. That's my fear exactly. Don't let them move in, or you'll be supporting them forever. You need to consult with a lawyer as soon as possible. Break up with her and evict her. Don't let them squat. No joke. Once you open that door, it's way harder to close it. Getting legal advice early is key because emotions can cloud the situation fast. Breaking up and cutting ties might be tough, but it beats getting stuck supporting them for the long haul. Protect your space and your sanity. If the house is in your name, just kick her out and the 3 of them can go find a place together. Agreed. Letting them all stay when they've shown repeated patterns of irresponsibility only invites more chaos. If boundaries aren't respected now, it'll be much harder to reclaim your space and peace later. If she wants to play landlord to her parents, she can do it from a place they all pitch in for. You didn't buy a house just to become the fallback plan for 2 grown adults who can't stop gambling. That's not a partnership. That's a sitcom setup. Never sympathize with gamblers. You're not wrong for drawing the line. Love doesn't mean signing up to parent your partner's parents. Yeah, too many people confuse love with obligation. Like, yeah, they're her parents, but that doesn't mean OP has to co-sign their mess. If they've already been evicted twice and still haven't changed, what's going to make this time different? Letting them crash rent-free just teaches them that someone will always save them. I get wanting to help family, but at some point, tough love is the only love that actually helps. Next story. Am I the a-hole for not letting my ex-husband and one of his future step-kids come inside? Our custody arrangement is for each of us to pick the kids up on our designated day during a 2-hour pickup window. He arrived at the house, and I already had the boys ready. I saw his car pull into the driveway on my camera, so the boys were already halfway to the door when my ex knocked. I opened the door, and he was holding the hand of a 4-year-old. He asked to come in and said his fiance's son needed to use the bathroom. I told him I didn't want him to come inside because I don't feel comfortable with him in my house. He has a history of snooping through my things. He asked me to take his future stepson to the bathroom, and I said I was uncomfortable with his situation. He said the boy needed to pee. I suggested the McDonald's up the road. He replied that my bathroom would be way cleaner than a McDonald's. At this point, my 11-year-old started pestering his dad to stop so they could leave. My ex said, "Your brother needs to use the bathroom." My son said, "I'll take him." My ex replied, "No, your mother would rather he pee his pants. We'll go, and hopefully we'll get to the McDonald's in time." My ex and the boys left. He messaged me afterward, saying I was cruel to a child and that punishing him like that wasn't okay. He said I made us both look bad in front of our kids and should be embarrassed by my actions. I've been fighting with him for so long that my perspective is screwed up. Was I in the wrong? Now for the comments. If the kid needed to pee, the ex could have stopped prior to arriving at his ex's. He knows the relationship is strained. Good Lord, he has a 2-hour window. My ex and I, 6 p.m. the end. It's a little boy. He can pee basically anywhere. Point and shoot. My 4-year-old had 3 side-of-the-road pee breaks today. We stopped for multiple bathrooms breaks on the 3-hour drive, but of course peeing off the road is cooler. Reminded me of my nephew. We caught him peeing on his dad's car tire, and when asked what he's doing, he replied that he's watering the car so it would grow to be a bus. Cool as a cucumber 4-year-old. Okay, so I like to ask my husband these scenarios and get his 2 cents. He seems to think, because you have stated you've had multiple problems with the ex, that this was more about control. He wanted you to do what he said. Was the boy hurting and crying because he had to go? If not, my spouse thinks it was a power play by your ex. If it were me, I would have asked my son to take him and told the ex to go wait in his car. But if this douche just liked to jerk you around, then not the a-hole. He was holding my ex's hand and kind of looking around. He didn't say anything. Your son did actually offer to take the kid to the bathroom and your ex declined. Sounds like a power play to me. You can remind that he is not welcome into your house unless it is life or limb, and he needs to organize himself properly before he arrives. Not the a-hole. Time to do exchanges at Mickey D's. That doesn't work because he will be late, and then if I go home, he'll want me to come back and then say I'm denying him his custody time. Judge said he can have a 2-hour window for pickup, but it's not fair to me to have to sit in a parking lot for 2 hours. So this is what was agreed upon with the judge for both of us. It's not perfect, but everything else we tried was worse. OP, does your attorney know your ex is trying to gain access to your house and is pushing the child exchange windows? This, from what you said here, seems harassment. Oh yeah, not the a-hole. He knows about the windows, but I didn't tell him about what happened yet because I'm still processing it. He's already dealing with the complaint my ex made about me taking the boys to see Superman after he told me he wanted to take them. I am so anxious about telling him there's a new issue. Last story. Am I the a-hole for outing my ex-coworker's boyfriend as a sex offender to her children's guardians? So for backstory, my ex-coworker was very vocal about her custody battle for her 3 boys with CPS. To keep it short, there was abuse that resulted in her 3-month-old ending up in the ER with a broken femur and multiple healing fractures all over her body. She has 2 fathers for her 3 children. Her first and third children share the same father, while the second has a different one. There is currently a criminal case against her and the father of her second child regarding the abuse. From what I know, that father is a known meth user and tested positive multiple times during the custody battles. The paternal grandparents of her first and third children were granted custody of all 3 children. She chose to give up custody so that if she had more children in the future, she could keep them and maintain visitation rights with her 3 kids. Now to the title. My ex-coworker, we'll call her Kelly, had a couple of different boyfriends during the custody battle, but her most recent and longest relationship over the past 2 years is with a guy who made me uncomfortable. So I looked him up. He had been charged with 3rd-degree sexual assault and 5th-degree criminal sexual conduct on 2 separate occasions, and based on a police report, it was against a minor. She had been talking about him a lot and eventually moved him into her home, which made me nervous for her kids. So, I found the grandparents who have custody of the children on social media and sent them the information. They thanked me and have now made it so that she only has supervised visitation and her boyfriend is not allowed around the children. I felt like that was the right thing to do because kids come first, and he seemed like someone I wouldn't want around mine, especially after what they've already gone through. But when I mentioned it to my mom, she said it was none of my business and acted like I was awful for saying something. Was I wrong for reaching out? Should I have just kept it to myself, or did I help? Not the a-hole. You did the right thing, and don't let anybody try to tell you otherwise. For real, kids don't get a second chance at safety. OP did what needed to be done. Some people stay quiet out of fear of drama. But nah, this was solid adulting. This ain't just gossip. It's public record plus child safety. That dude had no business being near any kid. You did what had to be done. Tell your mother to join the rest of us in the 21st century. You don't mind your business when people, especially children, are at serious risk of harm. There's a very good reason why the grandparents thanked you, not the a-hole. You did the right thing. People like your mom turned their heads when this was going on back in the 60s to 90s and before that. Bad things continue to happen when good people do nothing. I wish there was some way to make OP's mom spend a day listening to what happened to those kids when people look the other way. The harm is real and it stays with you forever. I rarely make this statement, but tell your mother to stuff it. More people in this world need to watch out for children. People know things and keep their mouths shut, and then when something happens, they say, well, I knew that was going on, but it was none of my business, so I didn't interfere. Well, if you knew about it, you should have interfered. It's just kind of annoying when people don't. It really needs to be about the best interest of the child. People either don't do any research or accept the excuses others make for their behavior. And yeah, if they're lonely and don't want to be alone, they're willing to accept anything somebody says. Maybe someday she'll realize that she owed her children more than that, but she would probably benefit from some counseling. Bottom line, you did the right thing. And if your mother doesn't like it, too bad.